but also in many cases economic earners for households and families. So there is a lot of global evidence to support that investment in childcare supports families and communities further than we would expect. I hope that answers your question, Rogers, to an extent. Yeah.
Yes, we're going to come to you. I think I'll give you 2 or so more minutes to really explain deeply on how development partners can really come in and influence uptake for childcare, but also address some of the lacunas that most of our parents or most of the households are faced with. Now, on my right, like I mentioned, we have Ms. Makaru. She's a researcher, and she has identified a number of key challenges that still exist in the childcare space in Uganda, but also regionally. Now, we all know that childcare has a number of attributes or a number of benefits, like Ms. Nadas talked about. But what is most critical is increasing female labor force participation, increasing the availability of time afforded to our girls and young women to engage in productive activities. Now, for the girls, we know they're supposed to be in school, and for the women, they're supposed to be productive. But it also happens at a very critical time in our sisters' lives, between 24 to 35. So if they are spending too much time in childcare, do we think we are going to achieve the demographic dividend that we've been talking about for these 2 days? But critically, I want you to share with us some of the challenges associated with childcare in Uganda and some of the possible recommendations for changing the trend.
Thank you very much, moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. I had a very nicely done presentation that I wanted to speak to, and it has all the things that the moderator has asked me to talk about. So I'm going to talk about those in the order that I had prepared. So by the end of my 5-minute presentation, I will have spoken about all of them. I think what one of the key issues he raised here is female labor force participation and time spent on productive activities for women. He said 24 to 35, but I think we can all agree that we need to widen that age band to be able to fit the women in our society who are struggling with childcare. So we need to understand why childcare is important, and my colleague from UNICEF talked about some of it. We know this is a period from pregnancy to 3 years that is most important in childhood development, in human development. I think NPA emphasized that yesterday, but we also know that this is the age where there are critical threats to childhood development. Poverty, insecurity, gender inequalities, violence, and all other things. If my presentation was up, I would ask you to look critically at our population structure, because I had it in that presentation. When you look at it, we have about 31% of our children between 0 and 9 years. The ages that make the childcare space that we are talking about, 0 to 3 or 0 to 4 in this case, that it's been categorized 0 to 4, is 16.5%.
IT, can we have a doctor's presentation?
Yeah, I would really like all of us to look at that population structure, which is my 3rd slide. So for us to be able to understand and quantify the extent of need we have in childcare, we have to understand our population structure. Looking at the base of it, the childcare age is the base of it, and it's the widest population that we have. But we also know that there are other things globally. It's not just Uganda where we know we have a crisis. A few of the presenters earlier have talked about the quality of ECCE, and we can extend this to childcare as well, where quality means creating and maintaining and nurturing and safe environment, building and maintaining responsive relationships between caregivers and children, engaging caregivers in a nurturing way, and there's a whole nurturing care framework for this. adhering to play-based routines that stimulate children, building a child's experiences on a culturally relevant experience, but also meeting local standards to policies and the legal framework and all that. Now, globally, over 350 million children are in need of childcare but don't have access. So what do we do about this? There are some countries and in Africa as well as elsewhere that have put enabling environments in place. When I say enabling environment, it's the policy framework, it's the legal framework, it's how much support and financing is going into childcare. For example, in Uganda, we don't have a law that supports childcare. I know Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development have been working on some parenting initiatives and putting in place parenting guidelines, which are a welcome idea, that is to define the framework. And only Uganda and Mauritania in African countries allow children to go to pre-primary school at 2 years. The other countries cap it at 4, so before 4 you can go to early childhood, 3 or 4. But Uganda we allow. And what this speaks to really is that we have a push for childcare in spaces, but we put them in the wrong space. We put them in early childhood centers, we put them in primary schools, but they are not ready for it. And we have seen that some of our early childhood centers are really not equipped. They don't meet the quality. But you also know that you know people, your friends, your sisters, your brothers, your relatives, whoever, they are sending children to school at 2 years, mainly because they don't want the children to stay at home with a maid. They don't want to leave they don't want they relate to children of the same age. They think they will learn something, but yet when they go to these early childhood centers, they are learning things that are way beyond what they should be learning. There are economic situations that leave out parents who are vulnerable. So we really have a demand push for childcare. We just don't know what to do about it. And the supply response is to enroll our children in these informal and unregistered centers that don't meet minimum standards. The gender dynamic that he talked about is very huge. The burden of care falls disproportionately on women. Some of them are young children being mothers. There's no support. There are some programs in Uganda that have supported teenage. Okay, thank you. There are some programs in Uganda through civil society partners that are beginning to support teenage mothers and the like, but we know the burden is still great. We have some data to show that when mothers are supported with childcare interventions, women are more productive. If they are in small businesses, their businesses are more profitable. And in some of the recent work we have done, during COVID, there was an observation that although all the parents were at home, this study was done at household level, the care for children disproportionately fell on the women rather. The men did not change their behavior at all when it came to childcare. But remember, all of them were at home because we were in a lockdown. And then in a more recent study that's actually still ongoing, which is supporting business women in markets around Kampala with childcare interventions, women have shown an overwhelming enthusiasm to enroll their children in these childcare centers. There is also work that has been done by the World Bank, which shows that same impact. Availability on women's time and how childcare improves the women's economic well-being. So there is data to show that childcare has really positive effects. But in Uganda, we still battle with some of the cultural norms and practices because, oh, how will your mother-in-law look at you because you have taken the child to like a community care facility or some other care facility. So those are challenges. Our laws, the affordability is a challenge, availability of models, especially in rural areas, especially among the vulnerable populations. Those are all challenges we struggle with. The quality is quality of childcare to be able to identify a caregiver who will stimulate your child and in a safe environment, that is still a huge problem. The cost to parents is a huge problem. Providers also in some cases struggle with compliance, where the standards are. And of course, we don't have enough data to learn about these things. So amidst all these challenges, there are a few things we can learn from practices globally. One, I think the person who introduced the session says there's a GROW project from the World Bank. The World Bank has these smart investments in childcare. Some of the money is coming to Uganda. This is an opportunity for government to increase investments. There are home-based learning centers. I think LABE and some of the other implementing partners are doing such. They need to scale wider but downwards in age and have livelihoods component for these. And low-cost free options for vulnerable parents. We can learn from Kidogo model in Kenya, which has the mamapreneurs. There's also Tiny Tots in Kenya, and Sugira Mriango in Rwanda. All these are projects that have had significant and good impact on both the children and the women. So there's a lot that we can learn globally.
Thank you, Ms. Makaru, for the wonderful presentation. As we go to Nada, once again, I request the IT team to display her presentation, because I'm going to have some very targeted questions for her to discuss with us. Now, when we discuss child care, we are well aware that our resource settings are different, Nada. And one of the key issues or key fears for most of our communities is the cost of child care. Even us who are in this room, I know we really struggle with that cost, especially when it comes to saying, let's pay for the non-paid care that our wives or our sisters are providing in homes. So that is a very critical area that I want us to discuss. Now, from UNICEF's perspective, how do we identify the cost-benefit analysis for child care? And how do we link child care to our push as members in this room to increase access to ECCE? Because you know it's a very, very strong foundation and a very good lever for us to increase access, because we expect that when children have this adequate child care, it's the same children who want to transit now from the home to the ECCE center. And we expect them to go through all the other education levels. From your perspective at UNICEF, what kind of analysis do we need to undertake to ensure that government prioritizes the issue of child care, but also that as they prioritize it, we make it very easy for them to invest, because the challenge is always not enough resources. And as UNICEF, how have you tried to break down the issue of child care at community level?
Thank you, Roger. That's a very full question. I think some things have already been mentioned, but we, as UNICEF, in collaboration with Genesis Analytics and coordination, of course, with the relevant ministries around ECD, so the Ministry of Education and Sports, Ministry of Local Government, and of course your Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, we're working on a cost-benefit analysis on ECCE and childcare specific to Uganda. This is something that we're just starting now, and our colleagues at Genesis Analytics have been meeting with different stakeholders. We do feel that this will be evidence for Uganda specific. I think there's a lot of global evidence out there, but it will be evidence for us as a collective to work off of and to engage with various stakeholders on what the benefit is. I can't tell you that the analysis hasn't been done yet, but it will be done within this year, this time frame. So I think when we have that information, it would be good for us to have a convening and share and discuss. Roger, I see my presentation is up. I think it's a good guide.
If you can select one slide that you would have to talk about deeply, then that would be fine with us.
Yeah. Do you want me to go through it quickly? Yeah. So, you know, I won't get into the details here, but obviously there's a benefit we've already talked about of integrated early child development and a high return on investment, including a high return on investment for childcare as well. These are things that are known and have been established by many countries. I've already talked about this, but there, you know, obviously we know there's a disproportionate amount of childcare that's given on women versus men. And they often are the primary breadwinners. So having some sort of support, whether that support is formal or informal, you know, there obviously is a difference, but as you mentioned, Rogers, in some cases, it's informal childcare. So it's a grandmother or someone else caring for the child. In other cases where there isn't that family support, there is the need for more formal childcare. And also this slide is I think really important and telling. And these are reputable sources here, that the earlier we invest in children, the higher the return on investment. So as you can see from the slide, things like nutrition in the very early stages of life, healthcare in the early stages of life, and through, you know, preschool or ECCE yield the highest return on investment. I'll go through this very quickly, but you know, we as UNICEF, we're trying to focus on what we call key family care practices, and those revolve around multiple approaches or different tiers of approaches. Strengthening enabling environments to support primary caregivers in their childcare, supporting and strengthening the workforce, raising levels of awareness on the importance of childcare and the importance of key family care practices, and I'll explain what those are. Promoting gender norms and socialization, and then empowering parents and communities and encouraging participation. Next slide, please. So we target the key family care practices around 4 transformative shifts. From maternal to paternal leave, of course here we're talking about the formal employment sector, but we also have guidance for the informal sector, because some of the things that apply to the formal sector may not apply to the informal sector. From infrastructure to people, to really thinking about childcare from not necessarily from a center based, but from a people who are around, what kind of people are around to support and provide childcare. From individual to co-responsibility, and then from reducing parental stress to enhancing family well-being. Why are why are family-friendly policies important? They're good for children, good for women, good for families, good for business, and good for the economy of a country. Next slide, please. Yeah. We can skip this one, please. Yeah. So our recommendations for affordable, accessible quality childcare revolves around governments being the process of assuring universal access to quality, affordable childcare. Again, I'm not talking about center-based childcare necessarily for the 0 to 3, but childcare as a holistic approach. We look at it as being able to meet diverse family needs. There is evidence to suggest that through public funding and public spending on this, there is a benefit from that, and ensuring the capacity development of childcare workforce. So ensuring that, as the doctor mentioned earlier, and my colleague mentioned, ensuring that the people who are providing for more formal childcare are really well equipped to provide it. And that has a safeguarding and child protection ramification, of course. We can skip this slide, please. I'm just in the interest of time. I do want to note that we have a few UNICEF resources. These are global resources that can be adapted. There is the Childcare and Humanitarian Crises. This is examples of what you can do in acute onset emergencies, examples from different partners and organizations. And this was in collaboration with the Humanitarian Collaborative at the University of Virginia and UNICEF. And then on the next slide, you know, I think it would be great if the organizers are able to share these PowerPoints with everyone. Next slide, please. I'm almost done. Again, I mentioned the Childcare and Humanitarian Crises document. There's also family-friendly policies for workers in the informal economy. I think this would be very applicable and usable in the context of Uganda. And then the last resource is really for around what governments and businesses can do to support childcare in the country. What are we doing in Uganda? I mentioned the cost-benefit analysis that we're doing. We also have a package called Caring for the Caregiver. This is to support primary caregiver, parental mental health and well-being, which we see as contributing and is part of childcare. Of course, Rogers, this I'll leave to you to elaborate on, but the NIECD Policy Costed Action Plan, which would be inclusive of childcare, and then increased access to ECCE services, as the theme of this symposium is focused on, because that is a form in some way of childcare. And then mobile ECD centers and services. This is an approach that we are exploring with our partners at Finchurch Aid, and would like to explore further and see how it can be supportive to parents who have to go out into the field to work and take their children with them. Is there a way of providing mobile ECCE and childcare services? Thank you.
Thank you, Nada, for that elaborative presentation. I think she deserves a big hand clap. Now, my question goes to Dr. Jacqueline Makaru. Now, you presented your research or a number of studies, and we know that actually childcare fits within different cultural norms and values. And we know that giving away a child to be in care of someone is one of the hardest decisions that parents have to make. Have there been any culturally relevant and evidence-based programs that you have interfaced with that can really take away the fears of most of our parents, especially at community level, that childcare is really a very effective intervention and that they don't have to worry about the safety and security of their children while they're in the care of someone? I'm not talking about most of the facilities that we have in urban places, but in the rural areas, where there are issues of sacrifice, there are issues of trafficking. I imagine telling a parent in Karamoja that, no, we have a child care facility, you can leave your child there, and you can go and herd your cows and come back. Are there any evidence-based programs that you see that can influence community perceptions towards child care?
Okay. Thank you very much. That's a very difficult question to answer, because cultural and social community perceptions, practices, norms differ culture to culture, depending on, again, whether they are in a rural setting, peri-urban setting, urban settings. They all differ. In the morning, one of the morning sessions, someone presented about a piece of work they are doing with mothers in, I think it was Masaka district, and it had something about cultural practices. I have not encountered a lot of research that studies specifically cultural norms and practices in relation to childcare. But I have encountered pieces of work that speak to cultural norms and practices as regards certain practices, whether girls will go to school, how teenage mothers will be perceived or treated, and the like. So, and it varies depending on where the community is and what the culture practices are. But on this point, I want to emphasize that the whole idea of community raising a child, when I was growing up, there used to be this saying of it takes a village to raise a child. And now I know our villages are not as safe as they were when I was younger, but it really takes a village to raise a child. And we have to get a model of childcare that fits in the community. We want it to be a community, a homegrown kind of model that encompasses the whole community, so that there is peer security, there's peer safety, you're looking out for your neighbor's child and the like. And I think some of the organizations that are doing community-based ECD or home-based ECD are good models to learn from, because they seem to be working. There seems to be value in those models that in a way it creates a safe learning environment. It creates community collective responsibility for the children. So I don't think we should be looking in academic books for a model that is going to fit a particular cultural context or social setting. I think we should get into, and this partly has to do with Ministry of Gender, who are in charge of community, and also Ministry of Education and Sports, who are in charge of education, to come up with some kind of standards of what should these home-based or community-based caregiving facilities, child ECD, ECCE centers look like, what should be the standards, how do we involve the community, peer leaders, how do we involve the community administrative structures, whether it's police for safety or LCs or whoever it is. Because it's easier to talk about functionality in a relatively urban setting where we can have standards, we can have safety, we can have security, but it's different when we talk about rural communities and villages where, you know, everyone is kind of on their own. So we have to have our own home-based organic models where we can ensure that our children are safe, but there's also collective responsibility.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Makaru, for that wonderful response. Now, we have been joined by Ms. Rosette Nanyanzi. She's a gender specialist with Ministry of Education and Sports, and she's also an education specialist, I guess. So most of my questions are going to revolve around the intersection between gender and education. When we talk about child care, the World Bank has already told us that our schoolgirls are spending 20 to 30% of their daytime in child care work, in the home. So this limits their participation in other educational activities, but also recreation activities in communities. They are not playing, they are not learning anything, but they are busy working in the homes. So my question is, around child care, we've seen that it's also one of the windows that we can use to achieve gender equality. Now, in education, we want you to really explain to us how we can really place child care amongst the education priorities and how we can see the influence, how we can influence the process of having it done by the adults in the home, but also ensuring that we limit opportunities for child care resulting into cases of gender-based violence. Because when we say equality, we don't want children to be abandoned by caregivers who are not really interested in taking care. And how do we have that mix?
And Chair, you have 6 minutes to close that session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that question. Where do we see the intersectionality? I think Ugandans, you are all aware that after COVID, many of our girls got pregnant.
Yes.
And to that effect, Ministry of Education put out guidelines for re-entry of the child mothers. Indeed, some of them came back, but some others were challenged. And the question around how do we take care of this baby? Yes. That is one question. But we're also aware that we have female teachers. We have just concluded a gender and well-being assessment in the refugee settings. And one of the issues that is coming through, that most female teachers are actually not performing to their expectation because they have this gender role of taking care of their babies. So we need to explore ways of ensuring that we establish centers, maybe to start with, because when we say we are starting for the centers for the child mothers, maybe that would be very difficult. Can we establish centers for our female teachers so that these centers can be able to cater for the children of the female teachers. Along the way, I think we also need to see how do we utilize within our communities. We have churches that most of the schools actually have churches. Can we start with that as a starting point, that at least there is somewhere where teachers and child mothers can actually put their children and then they get back into learning. That has not yet been done, but we are already exploring how best can we do this. And I think we can be able to utilize the existing research to build a case. I want to give an example of our members of parliament. For them, when they realized that they cannot be in the sessions, they put a child care at the parliament. Why is it that this is not happening for our female teachers? Why is it not happening for our other women that work in different subsectors? I think it is something that we really need to consider as government. Maybe we do a pilot, we start with a few districts and we see how it works, and then we learn along the way. That is what I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Rosette. I think we should have our parting shots. Let me begin with you, Dr. Makaru. What should we do different going forward? We know it's a new phenomenon we're discussing, but we also know that our current NDP has already identified it in the program implementation action plans, especially for human capital development. What should government pick on and move with?
Okay. Thank you, moderator. There are a number of things that we can do. One, I think government needs to put money where its mouth is. If we have identified childcare and early childhood education as one of the fundamentals, human capital development, then we need to put money. Yes, these partners can support, but government must own the agenda, government must invest in the agenda, and investing in the agenda is not just putting up a law, it's not designing a policy, it also includes making sure there are supportive mechanisms in place. Caregivers are trained, caregivers are regulated, because some of the heinous crimes happen in such settings. And then we as partners also must kind of create a community of practice so that we coordinate our implementation in a very organized and holistic manner. And I would task the Ministry of Education to provide a framework where all these partners can commit to say, we are going to operate with you in a more organized manner, so that we don't have a crowding of partners in one part of the country and then other parts of the country are just, they are arid areas for these interventions. So coordination is important, investment is important, and the regulatory framework are very important.
Coordination, collaboration, and financing. Now, let me come to my senior colleague, Nada. In a low resource environment like the one we're operating in, which communities really deserve an investment in childcare more?
I might modify my answer to you. So first I want to just elaborate on the response given from my colleague. I think those are very important points, and I think that we do need to look for efficiencies in the system. If we don't have additional funding, I mean, there is a call for additional funding and resources to go where they're needed and where there's a cost benefit. If that's not possible, we need to look at how we can make the systems more efficient. I think, Rogers, I'm just going to emphasize a point made earlier. In low resource settings, if we're unable to, provide a certain level of infrastructure, etc., I think we do need to relook at the existing guidelines, and we are working with the Ministry of Education on this, at looking at developing actual standards for ECD centers that are, as Sean Powers yesterday said, achievable and very targeted, and to try not to have, 40 or 50, but to really look at having, maybe we just need 8 or 8 to 10 or so to start off with, and really have standards that are achievable by the community-based ECD centers or creches, since we're talking about childcare, nurseries. I do think that they have to be regulated, even if they're in a community setting. There should be some level of oversight and regulation, but it has to be within what communities are also capable to do. So we can say, I can argue that safety is number one, ensuring we have capable people who are really looking out for the benefit of these children. Infrastructure is important for safety reasons, like having fences, etc., so young children don't go out. But I think if we can focus on some core standards, we can make some achievement. So that would be my takeaway. It's really elaborating on
Thank you. And lastly, Rosette should really discuss something very critical to our entire symposium. We had over 600,000 girls who gave birth during the pandemic in 2002, and we're already discussing the issue of childcare. Do you feel the adequate systems from community level to national level to be able to track whether these children are actually getting appropriate care or not, and what can we do different?
Thank you very much. I think the systems are there in place, and I think right from local council 1, there is that structure. Are they aware of what is happening to the children in that community? We have parasocial workers, we have VHTs. We really need to get information. How are they dealing with the children of the child mothers? I think that is very critical. The structures are there. So what do we need to do moving forward? I think we need to build their capacity. We have been working in a multi-sectoral manner, but I realize that we have not engaged well the Ministry of Local Government, because they have that structure that actually goes up to the local government level. How do we ensure that they have the capacity to look at the different needs of these children at that age group, so that they can actually be able to link them to the different support services within their communities? That, I think, is not happening, and I think moving forward, that is what we need to do. But also, the role of the districts. How do we ensure that we can actually get to know who are these children? Where are they? What are we doing? If we don't know where they are, that means we cannot be able to come up with this intervention. So I think it requires all of us maybe to do a comprehensive study to establish how many of our children, maybe for the last 3 years, actually got pregnant. Where are they? The children, are their children being taken care of? I think if we can do that, we'll be able to have better outcomes for this country. I thank you.
Thank you, Rosette. And thank you, my panelists, for sticking to the time and for the wonderful discussion. I wish we would go on and on and on, but I'm told that we're going to have an online discussion, an in-depth discussion on childcare, and I'm going to invite you, including my senior colleague, to really present the GROW project, its objectives, and its results, so that we can really see where we can fit into that project and what added value we can add, but also to define more the childcare space in Uganda, regionally and globally. When that time comes, I'll be able to share with the event organizers for you to join in. Mr. MC, I'm done.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers Gorova. Thank you, Tim, Dr. Jacqueline Makaro, Rata, and Rosette. Thank you very much. Can we clap for this team for doing us a good job? Thank you very much. We now are going for the last paper, the last presentation for the plenary, and this is the ECCE workforce in Uganda, challenges, opportunities, and lessons learned. We have talked about a number of things, but all these things cannot be done without a workforce. We need to talk about the human resource. who is going to make the wheel moving to ensure that we do what we are planning to do here. So can I invite Dr. Caroline Kavuma to come and chair this next session, which will take exactly 25 minutes. And as that is being done, can I request all those who have made presentations in this symposium, kindly submit your presentations to the Symposium Secretariat. Symposium Secretariat is going to share with all of you what has been presented here. For on your side is to make sure that you have written your email as eligibly as possible for us to be able to send you the presentations that have been made here and continue the discussion on this very important subject. Dr. Caroline Kavuma, you have the floor. Karibu.
Thank you very much, and I would like to invite Dr. Kabugo, Father Hilary Kago, Mr. Sekarala of Madarasa, and Elizabeth Kisache Kasidia of Ministry of Education and Sports, Teacher Training, ECCE. Those are the members of this panel, and as they come, I would like to say that the area of the workforce involves many actors, as you have been saying. It involves the parents, it involves the nannies, those informal people. It involves the fathers, mothers, aunties, grannies, and it also involves the workforce. Those are the teachers we are in charge of. So the fluidity in this is that many of the people come into play before they are trained to take care of children. Majority of them have not taken care of children. They don't know how to do it, but somehow they are the ones. So it's like Uganda has been so serious to the level that we leave the child to the unskilled hands. Mostly. The nannies who come to our homes, are they trained for this job? Someone needs to ask. Where do we get them from? We are taking on the frustrated bit of people are the ones that are taking care of the child who has a lot of hope in the world. And that's where we are starting as we go into this session. May I please now invite Dr. Kabugo to please introduce yourself. I'll take them in the order in which they appear.
Thank you, moderator. My name is David Kabugo. I work at Makerere University, and I'm the deputy director of the Institute of Teacher Education and Research.
Thank you. And now I will invite Mr. Shafik Sekarala to please introduce yourself.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Shafik Sekarala. I work with the Madrasa Early Childhood Program.
Then next will be my sister here. This one is my OG. Elizabeth, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Sergeant Sambe Elizabeth. I'm a Principal Education Officer, the Department of Teacher Education, Training and Development, in charge of teacher training. Thank you.
And finally, we shall get further.
I'm Reverend Father Hilary Kago, the principal of St. John Bosco Cooperative Silodonga in West Nile, Yumbe. I have a special interest in ECCE. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a little time, but I think I've given the background that where we are, we might not be very, very okay with the workforce. The people who handle the children, and the children who are the future and the hope of everybody, our legacy, our destiny, and our everything, are left to the nannies who are themselves frustrated and also taken. Now I'll be taking it on from each of these. I won't do my summary as I had prepared it on this topic because we've been given very little time, and the team here is quite having a lot of things that I would like to share with you. And I'm going to start with Dr. Kabugo. Dr. Kabugo, as a teacher educator, within a university that is having so many institutions affiliated to Makerere University in this area of offering ECCE. I would like to know how much on the subject I've been talking about, how much do parents know about the role of nurturing from your perspective? And secondly, as you will note, I'm giving 3 questions to you at once. How well are teachers skilled for the important role of nurturing children? You know, at this level, we don't call it teaching as such, but it's nurturing. Even for the pre-primary teachers, they are still nurturing, and teaching equates very well with nurturing if you do it holistically. So we'd like to know from you, Dr. Kabugo, how well are teachers skilled for this important role? And finally, from you, what challenges have you experienced as a teacher educator in training a competent workforce for this country in this area of ECCE? Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. I have just a 2 slides PowerPoint. I have tried to abstract the significant challenges that we are facing as the ECCE sector, particularly from an angle of capacity building. You could just move to the other slide, but here from yesterday, we have been looking at the systems approach to understanding the gaps and addressing the challenges. From a systems approach, I understand that quality early childhood care and education should be understood as an activity system. It's a cultural, historical activity, and we have in this system different actors. We have in this system different actors. You could move to the last slide, and then I'll do some reverse engineering. Inside this activity system, we have actors. You are talking about parents, you are talking about children, you are talking about communities, we are talking about government, ministries, development partners. These are the actors.
Yes.
But you're interested in how well are these actors capacitated? Not only the parents, the teachers, the agencies, how well are they capacitated? I'll move slightly backwards and say, every actors in the system are uncoordinated. That's the challenge. We are uncoordinated, we are incapacitated, we are poorly trained, and we are resource constrained. That is significant challenge number 1. But 2, the other significant challenge, and that's on slide number 2 again, is the resources. The tools and the resources are inadequate. We are talking about funding. We are talking about resources that are outdated. We are talking about curriculum that needs to be revised. We are talking about tools and resources that are disintegrated. You are yourself talking about resources and tools that need to be localized. They're unlocalized.
Yes.
And we are talking about pedagogies that are outdated. And so that is point number 2 of the challenges. We are talking about declarations and laws and policies and guidelines that are either missing. For long, we are talking about the missing ECC policy, yet to be acted upon by cabinet. We are talking about the guidelines and policies and the laws that are unenforced. We are talking about lack of commitment. We are talking about untracked progress towards all these declarations. We are talking about achievement of the SDG, how well we have missing data on progress about these things. The other significant challenge we've been talking about since yesterday is inaccessible, poor quality, and exclusive services. And point number 5 from my abstraction about communication since yesterday is we are working in rather fragile contexts every partner, every stakeholders are working in very fragile contexts, emergence context and resource constraint contexts. And my sixth observation is the division of labor within this activity system. We are talking about funds-based, and the funds are really, tied to specific things because we are foreign, influenced. We are talking about self-centered players. We are talking about uncoordinated, but we are also talking about duplication of efforts. And lastly, according to my abstraction, we are talking about ECCE learning outcomes, which are cognitive-based. Many players are focusing on the cognitive domain of our children. We are talking about literacy and numeracy, mainly that, and we are majorly ignoring other facets of the full growth of a child, their social emotional well-being, social cognition, self-regulation, working memory, and the like. So those are the 7 significant challenges we are facing as capacity builders from my perspective.
Wow. You can see that we are almost operating in an environment that is really unhealthy, that is so restrained and constrained in a number of ways. The statement that the ECCE is inaccessible but also poor. It is there, it's poor but also inaccessible. So these are words that really tell you we are in a ditch in as far as we are empowered as the service providers. We are incapacitated, we are ill-resourced, and we do not have sufficient time with the child and the learner that we are all looking at as the child who is supposed to realize their potential. And now, that understood, I'm moving on to Mr. Shafik Sekarara. What are the key challenges that you see are affecting the ECCE workforce in Uganda, and what could be the workable solutions in regard to the teachers on the ground? Of course, I think it is partly answered by what Dr. Kabugo has said, but as you think about that, please also let us know what opportunities does Madarasa community-based model offer towards creating a competent teacher for this level.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kavuma. When you talk about the ECD workforce, actually you are talking about all those who are directly working with the children. Dr. Kabuga has just been talking about the capacity builders, the educators. But in the ECD workforce, we have the teachers, the assistants, talk about the cooks, the non-teaching, the educators, and so many others. And he has hinted on a number of challenges that the ECD workforce are facing. I just wanted to add 1 or 2 on what he has said. And one of the biggest challenge is the return on investment. Today, a teacher goes out to train and would spend between 2 to 5 million shillings for that course. But when you go out to get employment, they are paid between a range of 100,000 Uganda shillings to 500,000 shillings. So that is a big challenge when we are talking about the teacher in the classroom there. The compensation is getting, is it worth the kind of role he or she is playing, and also the money he or she invested in that course. Secondly, there is a lot of, the other challenge is around the policy changes we are hearing and we have seen, especially with the teacher policy that was launched, is it in 2019? is talking about all ECD teachers having a minimum of a bachelor's degree. That is a big challenge now, and many of the teachers are now really looking out. Choosing between teaching and doing other work. So you are seeing many of them now have started even migrating to the Eastern Europe, looking for other jobs, for the fear of not being able to fit within the requirements of the job. But there is also another issue of how do we identify, how do we prepare, and how do we support the teachers? I think that's what Dr. Kabugo had talked about. And therefore, because of that, we have very limited numbers of trained teachers. I was looking at the statistics of UBOS report 2019, and the report says we require up to 116,000 teachers to cover approximately 2,050,000 children. But we have only 23,669 qualified teachers, which is a ratio of 1 to 87. That's already another big challenge. So, coupled with what Dr. Kabugo has given, we really need to start looking at workable solutions. And one of the workable solutions could be, can we get now government recognition? Can we start seeing government taking on some of those teachers on the government payroll? And can we also have a robust kind of mechanism for training all teachers to bring them to the requirements of the teacher policy? I remember many years ago when the TDMS was starting, there was a way how all grade 2 teachers were trained to become grade 3s.
Yes.
Can we have that kind of deliberate action to have all the certificate teachers trained to at least get a diploma and later go into the bachelor's degree? Now, looking at, you asked me about how do we do it at Madrasa. Madrasa, which is an initiative of the Aga Khan Foundation, we do teacher training. But looking at all those challenges, we basically came up with 3 elements to support the training and supporting the teachers to improve on their competences. One is the theory and practice. We blend theory and practice. Teachers have time to go out and continue earning, but at the same time come to get the theory. So as they are earning, we are also doing the mentoring, the ongoing mentoring. So like throughout the training of 2 years or 3 years, the teacher is both getting the theory, but at the same time is being mentored. And we have also brought about the experiential kind of learning through peer support, through clusters, where a group of teachers will come and support one another in the areas of weakness. So those 3, the theory and practice, the experimental learning, and also the mentoring component is what has supported us at Madrasa to provide all the competences and the skills the teachers need. With that, I submit.
Thank you very much. And yeah, the issues you pointed out that are causing fears to the teaching force at this level, I think the next speaker is the able person that is going to address them, and that is Elizabeth. Elizabeth, as you respond to this question, please also remember to make a comment on what Shafiq has raised on the issue of teachers fearing and going to East Africa, actually many of them, I have got so many calls that are coming to us asking for pre-primary teachers, and all of them we can't answer them, unfortunately. Many providers are calling, please, and when I called the training institutions, because normally that's where I go, I say, hey Shafiq, could you have any, hey so-and-so, do you have any teacher? Someone is burning for a teacher at this level. And the answer I got for them, RASI 2 principles was that all the teachers we knew of that are good have left for the Middle East. And that is where we are. It's a truth. This age level, this level of ECCE has lost so many teachers that have gone to jail. Now, Elizabeth, those are issues that you also could comment on. Okay. Okay, there is a call for Lydia Mobiru and Angela to please report to the the moderator's table? Lydia Mobiru and Angela, you are needed. Now, for Elizabeth, we would like to know what are the most promising solutions to a cost-effective early childhood care and education teacher training program in Uganda in lieu of improving the status quo. And then the other one is that we really expect that what opportunities should teachers of pre-primary look up for at this era from the Ministry of Education and Sports.
Thank you very much, Coordinator. I'm Elizabeth. Let me start with the fear of the attrition, maybe our teachers going for greener pastures. In the first place, as a gentleman, uplifting quality for a teacher is what we want. We want a better teacher. The National Teacher Policy is for all teachers, as in the Education Act 2008, from all the 4 levels. So as we move the levels of other teachers, we can't leave behind our pre-primary teacher. The level of a bachelor's degree for the teachers of Uganda is within a 10-year span. Primary, basic education teachers. Basic education mean pre-primary and primary. That's why the journey has moved on. And in the national planning, NDP3, as I said earlier, we have brought them, government has brought them for government payment for diploma training in the 23 core PTC in the country, which is a very good move. This is a government-sponsored program for the first time of its nature. To me, I want to tell the nation here, it's a privilege, it's an advantage to come forth to lift our teachers from the level where they've been to where they want to be. My brother said, how? The issue could be, what makes a teacher in Uganda? You should be registered. I'm calling upon all our partners who are training teachers. If you have institutions, because they've been offering the private sector, please let them come and register to become the teachers of Uganda. Uganda government has opened for initial training in the government institutions, and also, I use this opportunity also to talk about the work solutions. That gentleman, Dr. Kabugo mentioned some things about untracked progress. We have a lot of good models here, build capacity of our teachers, which are not tracked. I have an example of community child care program, which was initially started by UNICEF in 2010, using the faith-based organizations, the communities, the parish chiefs, and the Twale chiefs, who reached the families. 2012, UNICEF initiated and we started the journey. In 2012, government caught up and said, this has worked. Communities were empowered and the model was very clear. Parish people were talking about identified caregivers within the community, children in the hands of the people in the community. 2014, 2019, government went on GPE1, and this was unpacking the learning framework. The model is still there in the communities, and some partners are trying to catch up with it, but you better come to ministry and you guide you how it has worked. It's one of the success stories we have, where caregivers are trained on job. We don't mind, you are already with the children. They trained you on job, on how to do it better. And those with qualification being guided on how to upgrade. Okay. So it's a model, and I'm happy to inform you that UNICEF is now redefining that, because there are some caregivers who qualify to register, to come to diploma. That is a very success story among the we asked about. Most effective, The most effective way, Madam Moderator,
In just 2-3 minutes.
is to ensure we take a record of what has been done with the prior. The challenging issue, Madam Moderator, is with some of our partners, inconsistency in programs. The 3 years they are on ECD programming, another funder comes for secondary. But you had equipped them in the ECCE skills and training of trainers. Another funder comes in the same organization, now we are going for gender. So the inconsistency in funding a similar partner, but is doing these 2 years ECCE. Next time, secondary. Next time, TVET. It makes the government fail to catch up with the progress, and gained in that organization is also on the year. So that becomes a challenge. Now, he said, what do we have?
There is someone who has not spoken and they are warning me on time.
I'm just going to read through. Government funding for diploma training for preparatory teachers is already a step ahead and a strength. Then the program budgeting in the Ministry of Education is another one, through Basic Education Commissioner and the group. They are budgeting clearly. They are going to budgeting with the planning department. Registrations of our preparatory teachers on TIMIS is the bigger institutionalization. They should become teachers in Uganda. The quality assurance by affiliating so many institutions into universities is another key benchmark, because that is we have a regulator. The UNITED, the National Teacher Policy CPD program through UNITED, which are coming forth, is a serious one, and also the opening for the government in the 23 core PTCs to start training pre-primary teachers is another one I can mention. Because of time, coordinator, I want to request that the suggestion for online dialogues for the ECCE partner, I think should start, because we need more dialogues. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, and especially for giving us assurance that the government has already taken on teachers. They are offering the first of its kind, sponsored by the government. The grade 3 teachers are upgrading to diploma on government scholarship. And 23 co-PTCs, please encourage them. I think government deserves a clap. Thank you so much for that assurance. And these teachers are going to be supported. You give them assurance by many other actors. And then teacher registration, please take advantage, encourage the teachers to register. Others will not go through. Finally now, Reverend Father Kago, please, you are going to give us some hints on how should teacher education, what should teacher education do to strengthen the ECCE workforce in the family, community, and at the school.
Thank you so much, moderator. That is our mandate as a training institution. And we are already doing it both in our context for the refugees, caregivers, and also for the host communities. And I'm happy to report that in our catchment area, we have already trained the biggest number of caregivers in this country, over 1,000. So, the first role, how we can support the ECCE workforce is by staff education, training, and skill development. Because we know knowledge and skills are very critical for the workforce. And we take that one very, very seriously. And also, trying to participate in the curriculum reform. We have noted here that people are complaining there is no uniform curriculum learning framework. So as being training institutions or teacher educators, we need also to participate in the curriculum reform so that the curriculum content or the learning framework is aligned with the needs of the learners. And also our role actually also is to lobby or advocate for more and more support in the training institutions. As we endeavor to undertake this training, we also lack some resources and some logistics which are necessary for in the training institutions. That also we pick it up very seriously as teacher educators. And more so, we need to involve ourselves in monitoring, mentoring, and coaching of the ECC workforce. We know some of these people come newly from the training institution as novice caregivers. It is the role of those who are already in the field to help them to, as somebody puts it, to put theory into practice. We need to move in them, mentor, and also coach them. This is our role, which we can take seriously. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think Father is putting emphasis on the issue of mentoring, coaching, and monitoring of these teachers. This is what we call workplace learning and teacher support systems. Teachers need to be supported, as well as the parents and other caregivers in the community. I want to just give you a little hint as we wind up on the need for more participation from you actors in curriculum development reforms, and those of you who are training, that we are going to do more engagement of more people in the curriculum development process, so that all people contribute to their child, and then we come together with the best model. About UNITE, as a person who is working directly with UNITE, I would like to say UNITE has the following promise in as far as the teachers at this level are concerned. There is going to be harmonization and standardization of academic programs and the CPDs. All people are giving CPDs, we are standardizing. And then we are going to have special and unique courses are there, like leisure management. All our children are being managed by different people, no teachers. These days you find somebody who has a hotel is also doing leisure management. So this is a course we are writing for caregivers and teachers that they should be able to manage, increasing teacher autonomy, that they should be able to take decisions that count based on what they know, the theories and the practice. Then attracting high quality candidates, because we would like these teachers to be A-level. In a way it is painful, but in another way we would like thinkers and people who are committed to nurturing these children with a serious agenda. So it's a bit painful, but support these moves because they're intended for these teachers to have a higher self-esteem and to deliver better. I would say more, but I think those are the most important, and since my supervisor is now at the podium, I would like to please stop here and thank you for your most kind attention. Okay, the panelists need another wrap, please.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for taking us through that session. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving towards the end of this symposium, and this is going to be our last session. I'm going to ask the Secretariat to come and present their communique that will be endorsed by our chief guest. Before they do that, I would like to invite